All right, we're not messing around here. I got the spreadsheet right up, and in the future, first of all, top 70 dynasty rankings. We might do something weird, wonky, like top 72, top 74, maybe top 75. I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call this video, but it's dynasty rankings. As we are at the Dynasty Roundtable going through and updating our dynasty rankings, I wanted to just put it out there to the people. This is nothing fancy. This is just a spreadsheet with our rankings in there. I'm learning more and more about Google Sheets as we go along through this process. So kind of seeing behind the curtain here, which I think is always cool to give you guys, the audience, a little backstage view. So, but you came here for rankings, so enough of that. Let's give you tier one. We're going to go by tiers. And these are Superflex, Tight End Premium, Dynasty Startup rankings or Dynasty rankings. And as you can see, this might as well be called the quarterback tier, the elite wide receiver tier, and the quarterback tier. Not really anything too controversial in here, if you ask me. I have seen some people putting Jaden Daniels at quarterback one. I'm not ready to do that yet. I know he looks like Lamar Jackson and can throw a little bit more accurately down the field. I mean, his QBR was 72.4 total QBR. His true passer rating 104.5, 148 carries, which was second this year, only to Jalen Hurts. So I get it. Jaden Daniels is impressive. But Josh Allen's still Josh Allen. And Josh Allen's proved it to us year in and year out. And he's still younger. He's on the younger side as well, Josh Allen. He's still just 28 years old. So age doesn't matter all that much for quarterbacks. And then, outside of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, we go down to Jalen Hurts, who, as long as he's in that offense, I think he's going to be just an elite fantasy asset, and I don't really see him leaving that offense anytime soon because they're having success. They're in the NFC Championship game. These assets at the top, there really isn't much to say. Now, I do have the wide receivers ahead of the other quarterbacks, who we'll talk about here in a minute. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Again, not much really to say about them. They're awesome. These are the safest assets in all of Dynasty. So let's move down a tier. Going down to tier two. And here we go. So we have Joe Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors. Again, I don't know if the Bengals defense is going to be as bad as it was this year, which is going to cause Joe Burrow to throw 50 times. But in Dynasty and in fantasy football, we want our quarterbacks to run. We want that Konami code quarterback, which is why you saw the top four quarterbacks in carries this past season, who are all on the younger side. None of them are older than 28 years old. All of those quarterbacks are in the top four in Dynasty rankings, and those quarterbacks are going to be at the forefront of my redraft strategy from here on out. Forget about, we'll talk about Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams and some of these other guys who do rush quite a bit, but Joe Burrow, just to give you in terms of carries, as I'm scrolling on this, Joe Burrow only 42 rushes this year, so he made all of his hay throwing the football. And I just don't know if that's sustainable year in and year out. But I do acknowledge that he's a really, really good player, which is why he's quarterback 5 for me. And then, of course, CeeDee Lamb. There's a little bit of uncertainty there, but I still have him as my wide receiver 3. And Malik Neighbors, who, again, the only reason these guys aren't in tier 1, CeeDee Lamb and Malik Neighbors, because we know they have the talent. It's their situation, right? Dallas is going to have a new coach. Who knows what they're going to do with Dak? I'm assuming they're going to keep him. I don't know what your other options are. Malik Neighbors, the coaching staff and general manager are still there, but for how much longer, we don't know. Who's the quarterback going to be? Is it going to be Drew Lock? Is it going to be Kirk Cousins? Are they going to draft Shedeur Sanders? I don't know. I don't know if any of that's going to be good for Malik Neighbors, but what you can't deny about Malik Neighbors is he's awesome. So there's that. Malik Neighbors, if you just sort it by I have a composite score of just like air yards, target share, yards per route run. He's number 2 amongst wide receivers when you average those things out, and like he's second only to AJ Brown in that metric that I kind of created and am tinkering with. He's 4th amongst wide receivers in air yards this year. Snap share over 91%, target share 34, almost 35%, which is insane. I mean, that's second only to AJ Brown again, and we know that the Eagles don't necessarily pass the ball a lot. The Giants were passing the ball much more. The Eagles threw the ball the least amount in the NFL this year. So, that target share isn't as impressive in that situation, whereas the Giants passed the ball the 8th most in football. So there you have it. So that makes that target share number even more impressive for Malik Neighbors. And unless they draft somebody at the top of I would have a hard time believing that they're going to take, if they take Travis Hunter at the top of the draft, or if they sign somebody. I mean, Malik Neighbors is the clear alpha there. So again, these are some of the more safer assets that you can have in Dynasty. Let's move on down to Tier 3. And this will take us up through 14 players. So we have Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brock Bowers, and Bijan Robinson. So there's a couple talking points in here, I think. Number 1, Puka Nacua over Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, we're not quite to the point where I would stand up on the table or pound the table and say, no, you have to draft this player over that player, right? And I say this all the time. If you or I were partners in a startup, or me and Matt Babich or whoever, and he said, I have to have Amon-Ra St. Brown over Puka Nacua, that's clearly the answer, and he was adamant about it, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to get in a fist fight over that. But I will acknowledge that I think Puka Nacua, given his age, given the system there, and again, there's a little bit of uncertainty regarding Matthew Stafford, and his future is a little bit cryptic nature. But when I average for air yards, target share, and yards per route run, first of all, and I know Puka Nacua missed some time, but he was clearly number 1 in yards per route run, over 4 yards per route run, close to a 30% target share. And the air yards are down because, he didn't play. He missed some time. But when you combine all those scores, or when I'm, and again, this is maybe a sloppy metric because I'm not a data scientist and, may never be an expert in that capacity. But when you weight, or when you average all those, air yards, target share, yards per route run, he's just behind Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, guys like Drake London. Drake London scored really high in this. Malik Neighbors and AJ Brown, because those guys were probably pretty high in target share and snap share. So I guess snap shares in there as well, which maybe it shouldn't be. So I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But nevertheless, you get the point. Puka Nacua is really, really good. And then when you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a little bit older, 1,100 air yards, and he played basically a full season. I don't think he missed any time, actually. Just going off the top of my head there. Snap share about 90%, target share, 27%. 27.3%. Yards per route run is, it's pretty good. 2.4 is nothing to sneeze at. But he comes in a little bit lower, and that's all. I mean, we're really just grasping, I don't know what the expression is, grasping at straws. Is that the right way to say it? Let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, because I do believe Jahmyr Gibbs is the clear RB1 because he's awesome. Like the one thing that I can point to is twofold. One, we know David Montgomery's going to be there, and you might think, well, that's not good. That the opportunity isn't going to be as good for him because of that, and he's not going to get the 76% snap share that Bijan Robinson got. And I understand that, but I do think it's actually a good thing because Jahmyr Gibbs is so efficient with his touches. And I had to check this again, and I still can't believe it's true, but according to Player Profiler and the breakaway run rate, 10% of his runs were breakaway runs, which they're runs of 20 yards or more, or 25 yards or more. I think it's 20 yards or more. I should know that. But nevertheless, whether it's 20 or 25, still an impressive. Like, just to give you an idea, Derrick Henry is the only other running back that played as much as Jahmyr Gibbs. His breakaway run rate was 7.7%. So Jahmyr Gibbs being 2.3% higher than any other running back. Saquon Barkley was at 7.2. Isaac Guerrero is actually pretty high in breakaway run rate. So again, very impressive and just so efficient. And you saw that, like when David Montgomery wasn't on the field, you saw just the explosiveness, and the Lions are really making us, because I was right there amongst the people who were making fun of him for taking Jahmyr Gibbs that high, and they're just making us eat our words. And now I do believe Brock Bowers it belongs here. Even though there's uncertainty with the coach, uncertainty with the offensive coordinator, the quarterback, he is quite clearly the number one target on that team. If you take him in a Dynasty startup, if you trade for him in Dynasty, you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting not just an elite tight end, but an elite pass catcher who, by the way, like when we talk about, target share, pretty high up there. Like Trey McBride technically had more targets than, had a higher target share than Brock Bowers at 29.3%. But Brock Bowers' 25, almost 26% target share is really good as well. And like I said, he is the focal point of that offense. And going forward, you know exactly what you're getting in Brock Bowers. And he's only 22 years old, just turned 22. And then Bijan. Bijan is going to be as close as we get to a bell cow. So he definitely belongs in this territory. He's just 23 years old. That offensive line is going to be good next year. And Michael Penix I know it's a small sample size, but he looked pretty good to me. So, again, we'll move on down to Tier 4. And there's Tier 4. It's a little bit bigger tier. And it starts with Mahomes here. And you know what? I should probably be color coding these. So Patrick Mahomes, quarterback 6, player 15 overall. Again, when we're talking about Superflex, I think quarterback is king. And I thought long and hard about putting Bo Nix actually above Patrick Mahomes. And I'll tell you why. It's because Bo Nix rushes the football. It gets back to what we were talking about earlier. And I do think that there are opportunities when players hit and they hit unexpectedly. We have or at least my natural instinct as a Dynasty gamer is, okay, I got to trade this guy away while his value's high. And that creates a unique opportunity if that guy is actually legitimately good. And I think Bo Nix with Sean Payton has a chance to be really good because he has good coaching. I think the talent around him is only going to improve. And he carried the ball 92 times, which is fifth amongst quarterbacks, just behind Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. He carried the ball more times than Anthony Richardson, more times than Kyler Murray. So, and when you look at some of the other metrics that would indicate, okay, is this guy is this guy for real? Catchable passes, good. Catchable red zone throws, good. Passer rating versus man, good. Passer rating versus zone, not as good, but not horrible. Not going to kill you. And then true completion percentage is okay, and true passer ratings, it's about middle of the road. So there are some signs that Bo Nix developed and can improve upon this season, especially from a fantasy perspective where we just really want those rushing yards from our quarterback. I thought about putting him higher, especially given the fact that he was an older rookie, going to be 25 years old. Now Drake May, again, it's tempting to put him higher. Um, and when you look at what he did in those 10 games, I believe in games where he threw over 20 passes, he averaged about 17 fantasy points, which was tied with Jordan Love for quarterback 13 overall. So yep, I'm looking at it, and I think that was 10 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that was 10 games where he threw over 20 passes. So essentially, he was the starter or the starter-ish for 10 games. So his stats are going to be a little bit, down. He did rush the ball 54 times. So if you go 10, that's 5.4 rushes per game. So if you times that by 17, that's 91.8 rushes. So that would have put him right behind, Bo Nix. So, and we're talking about, so there's a chance Drake May should be a little bit higher as well. And Drake May looked really good, and he's 22 years old. Clearly, I think should be above Justin Herbert. If you wanted to say Devon Chain or Ashton Genty should be above Justin Herbert, that could be an argument you can make. But the thought process is quarterback. I want to get my quarterbacks here. And Justin Herbert wasn't horrible this year. I mean, he played not great in the playoffs, obviously, but he wasn't. He was quarterback 12, quarterback 14 in fantasy points per game, and I think he's got a lot of upside. And at quarterback 9, I feel is appropriate. And then we have our first rookie here, Ashton Genty. Again, depending on landing spot, he could move up. You could talk me into putting him above Devon Chan. So these rankings are fluid, but as of right now, I think this is an appropriate spot to put Genty. Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins, I think this is about where they belong. Brian Thomas Jr. is amazing. If I took a quarterback, there's a real chance I should maybe have Brian Thomas Jr. above Mahomes, but let me know what you think about that in the comments. In a super flex league, I'm just going to side with the quarterback when in doubt, so that's why Mahomes is there. Let's move on down to tier number 5. And this can be like a light bluish color. So it starts with Drake London, who, as we mentioned before, Drake London, when we look at that score, he scored really highly in this statistic that I don't know if I created it or not. I just kind of averaged all, air yard, snap share, target share, yards per route run. And I don't know if snap share belongs in there, but again, we're experimenting and tinkering with statistics, which is something I'll admit I'm new at. So I'm not the greatest at putting the stats together as of right now, but I will say Drake London ranks really highly in that weighted average. He's number 3. I mean, the air yard's really good, snap share, almost a 30% target share, almost 2.5 yards per route run, all check is what we're looking for. So I used to not be a Drake London guy, but I'm pretty all in on Drake London, and him being 23 years old, I may have to move him up a tier, to be perfectly honest with you. Trey McBride, again, similarly to Brock Bowers, you kind of know what you're getting. I referenced the target share earlier, and it really feels like he's Kyler Murray's go-to guy, which kind of hurts Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit, which is unfortunate for those of us who have Marvin Harrison Jr. But, we referenced that earlier. He actually had a higher target share than Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers had a pretty decent target share. Brock Bowers, if I can find it here, hold on. 25%, almost 26%. Trey McBride, 29%, 29.3%. So I think you know what you're getting. I think, again, this tier is full of really good players. And then we have another quarterback in C.J. Stroud. Honestly, I may have to move him down just looking at this right now because this is a quarterback. I have him at quarterback 10. He didn't play great down the stretch. He played good in the playoff game. Didn't necessarily play good down the stretch. He's not a quarterback that's going to rush the ball. Only 53 rushes on the year. But again, I think there's stability in that asset. I think he can have a better year down the road. So again, I wouldn't lower him too much. But then we have some of these other wide receivers like A.J. Brown, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And I moved up Marvin Harrison Jr. because I've moved him up recently because I do think when you look at some of the advanced metrics, I do think he got a little bit unlucky, and the connection just wasn't there for whatever reason between him and Kyler Murray. And it's kind of perplexing to me, but I'm not sure. Just some of the utilization was weird, to be honest with you. Now, he doesn't score highly in this metric I've created. Like air yards, he was 1,566 air yards. He was on the field about 80% of the time, 79.5% of the time. But the target share, 22%, which is not bad for a rookie. But Trey McBride is clearly the number one option in that offense. And the target share speaks to that. And then the yards per route run, very strange. 1.68 yards per route run, which is a lot lower than you would think for somebody with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s skill set. So perplexing, but I still think he belongs above Garrett Wilson, above JSN. You could say that JSN's a little bit, we've seen him do it, whereas we haven't really seen it with Marvin Harrison Jr., so I can understand if there's a disagreement there, but I still believe in the upside of Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's move down to tier number 6. And this will take us through 38, I think. So it starts with Jordan Love. Signed that contract. There's some stability there. He's just 26 years old. I know he was hurt. I know he didn't have a great year. But I still believe he belongs securely in round 3 of a dynasty startup. Saquon, I would be very, very tempted to trade away Saquon. I've talked about this before. I'm probably a little bit lower than some people on Saquon if I had to guess. I haven't really looked at anybody else's dynasty rankings. Kyron Williams is a stud. He's 24 years old. I know he gets by on volume, but it's a lot of volume, and I don't necessarily see that situation changing anytime soon because they took Blake Corum in round 3, and that didn't really affect his usage all that much. Then Caleb Williams, I have to believe with the hiring of Ben Johnson that they're going to improve that offensive line. He's gonna speed up his process. I do think that Ben Johnson is going to help Caleb Williams out a lot. In fact, there's a chance I move Caleb Williams up as we progress through the quote-unquote off-season because we know there's really no real off-season in Dynasty. Breece Hall, Rashee Rice, Kyler Murray, T. Higgins. And out of all these players, I think Kyler Murray is the one that I am just kind of done with. I put him about, like, if he was sitting there, I would be tempted by Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray to me just doesn't do it for me. I don't have any other way of saying it. I do recognize the rushing upside, but he doesn't really run as much as I would like him to, which is weird, but he still runs quite a bit. He still ranks, 1, 2, 3, 4. I should have these numbered better. I think that's 8th amongst quarterbacks in carries and rushing attempts. And you look at everything but passer rating versus zone. Everything's pretty good with Kyler Murray, but for some reason, it just feels like there should be more, like with somebody like Kyler Murray, now that he has Marvin Harrison Jr., and who knows, maybe it'll be better next year, but it's just, that's a player I just do not, I would trade him at this value, even if, though I have him ranked here, I'm just not a fan, and this is a part of a larger conversation, I think. Rankings are just a reference point for me personally, because we all know in Dynasty there's a multitude of strategies that you can employ. Win now, rebuild, more of a neutral approach. You could be, I've seen people go after picks and try to win now too, because they recognize, oh, wait, if I take the pick, I don't necessarily have to make that rookie pick. I could trade that rookie pick, which I think is the ultimate strategy, just acquiring as much value as you can. If that means you're going to be a productive struggle, then fine, so be it. But you get the picture. There's all sorts of different avenues that you can go down, and when you're trying to put rankings together, and we're working on this right now, and this is just my baseline rankings. When you're putting rankings together, you should, account for all those different possibilities. So account for, have maybe different rankings for a productive struggle, win now. But, again, this is more of a baseline. And again, rankings are a reference point. They're not the end all be all, for me at least. I have them because, and I want to have them, and I think they're good to have. But it's not like Kyler Murray is above T. Higgins in my rankings, I must select Kyler Murray. It's not like that, at least not for me anyway. Feel free to share what you think in the comments. And I think out of all these players, Breece I think is still really good, has a chance to climb. I would be interested in buying Breece Hall, even though there's, again, a lot of uncertainty in that situation. But Rashee Rice, to me, we saw a snapshot of how Kansas City plans on using him, and he got hurt really early on in that fourth game of the season. And if you take the first 3 games, and I understand it's a small sample size, he averaged over 20 fantasy points a game, and that would put him amongst the elite wide receivers in fantasy. I was very tempted to move him up a tier, but I think this is appropriate considering where his value is right now. He is probably, if not my favorite dynasty buy, he's at the top of my list in terms of players that I want to have, because similarly to TJ Hawkinson last year, we're going to miss some time. He's coming off of an injury, but we know what the situation is. It's Patrick Mahomes. The only other receiver I believe they have under contract that of note is Xavier Worthy. I'd have to check Travis Kelce's contract. I'm assuming Kelsey's planning on being there, but you never know. So again, Rashee Rice has a pretty damn good situation in Kansas City, and he's only 24 years old, going to be 25. So playing with Patrick Mahomes, who's not even 30 years old yet, let that sink in for a minute. Okay, so I don't know if this whole tier is going to fit on the page, but this is tier 7. Tier starts out with Jonathan Taylor, RB8 overall, 26 years old. I do have some concerns about the ankle injury. He looked a lot better towards the end of this season. So again, it's a player I'm kind of meh on, a 26-year-old running back. I'm probably not super into buying or selling at this price. But I think he belongs in this tier at the very top of it. Then Rome Odunze, one of the players I like a lot, but I think a lot of people are going to like Rome Odunze this offseason. And then we have some quarterbacks, Michael Penix, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield. I would probably have Penix below Baker Mayfield. It's fun when you make changes and then you disagree with your own changes that you make. But anyway, so again, there's the quarterbacks, this group of quarterbacks. I would prefer, it's not the end of the world, but I would prefer one of these guys to be my quarterback 2 in a Superflex league if I drafted them. Not required, but that'd be my preference to get to lock down quarterback. Then we have some running backs, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Bucky Irving. Not going to lie, thought about moving Bucky Irving higher than this, and maybe I should. I don't know, because Bucky Irving, he just feels like an awesome player, and I don't necessarily know how long Rachaad White is going to be there. I know Rachaad White has another year left on his contract, but when you look at breakaway run rate, good, 6.7%. Red zone carries per game, 2.2, so he's getting opportunities in the red zone. Routes run per game, good, almost 12, 11.7. 52 targets this year, playing part-time. He's a really good player. And I don't have the courage to put him above James Cook or Kenneth Walker, but you could talk me into it. I like Bucky Irving a lot. And Xavier Worthy, then we have some receivers, Xavier Worthy, Zay Flowers, and then Chase Brown and Josh Jacobs. I do believe Chase Brown, that's his backfield. He just feels like a really good fit in that offense. We'll see. It is kind of risky because they could draft a running back. That would, especially if they draft one on day 2, like if they take, I don't know, Travion Henderson or Amarian Hampton, that would kind of suck for Chase Brown, and it's very possible that they could do that. The Bengals have so many needs on defense. That would seem to be an illogical pick. A world where he is displaced from his role and his value could fall really quickly. And whenever that's the situation, I'm always kind of tempted to sell, but that would be my lean at least. So let's go orange here for tier 8. And we're getting pretty close to 70. So we'll start with Tet McMillan, DJ Moore, Jared Goff, Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith, Terry McLaurin, J.J. McCarthy, Sam Laporta, and Brandon Ayuk, who is wide receiver 25. And again, like, this is, to me, there's a lot of players I like, not a lot of players I love. Sam Laporta feels like a value right now at tight end 3, at least to me. I think he played a lot better towards the end of last year. So he did not score. Oh my God, he's down here quite a bit. Snap share was good, just not a lot of air yards. Yards per route run is okay. It's pretty good, I guess, but the target share, 17%. That is why he's not the tight end 1 anymore. And you have to consider too, the offense is going to be changing. Ben Johnson's not going to be there. We do have Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams in the offense as well, and David Montgomery too. So that's probably part of it. That's probably part of why his snap share was down, but he's still 24 years old. I still believe he's a set it and forget it tight end, but this is kind of where he belongs. So McCarthy, again, at quarterback 20 in a Superflex league. Who knows what Minnesota's going to do at quarterback? I know he had a setback with his knee, so I don't know if he's going to be ready at the beginning of the season. Goff, I had to lower because, again, he's not going to have Ben Johnson, and so he's at quarterback 19 for me. I would assume he's going to be okay, but, again, I don't know for certain. And he doesn't provide much from a rushing perspective at all. So he's really relying on that offense being good. And Terry McLaurin, I think if for a win now team would be a really good player to have. But again, he's 29 years old. Terry McLaurin, I don't think there's much debate. He had the best year or the best season of his career. Like when you start to look at the advanced metrics for McLaurin, he is number 10 in that weighted composite score that I created. Over 1,500 air yards, 23% target share, tied to Jaden Daniels. You can make the case maybe if this is a win now strategy, I should have him a little bit higher. Let's just end this with tier 9. So we actually went through 74, 75. So anyway. Let's see. Let's make this weird color. Kind of running out of colors. So at player 62, Amarian Hampton. So we have some rookies here. Caleb Johnson, Derrick Henry, Chuba Hubbard. So we got some running backs all in a row. And again, this is what I mean. Like rankings, it's a reference point. I felt like I had to have Derrick Henry high, but I don't necessarily know if I would trade whatever the equivalent first-round pick would be, probably a mid-first-round pick for Derrick Henry. That's probably not happening. But for a win-now team, Derrick Henry's pretty valuable. So these are the decisions you have to make when ranking players. And then Chuba Hubbard, who's my RB17, I'm probably going to be a lot higher than consensus with Chuba Hubbard. But when you look at just his season and the situation. I mean, he's 25 years old, so he's not old. There's a lot of tread left on the tires. Breakaway run rate was good, 6%. Red zone carries per game, almost 2.93. And he runs routes, and he gets targets out of the backfield. 54 targets, 16 routes per run per game, and the snap share. And Jonathan Brooks, doesn't look like he's going to be ready for the start of the season. I don't know, coming off 2 ACL tears, I don't know. And so I think his position in that offense, I would have a hard time believing that the Panthers would draft another running back, would pay even more to a position that they're paying a lot of money to. Remember Miles Sanders' contract that they paid not too long ago. So, again, and they extended Chuba Hubbard. So all those things point to Chuba Hubbard being a very useful fantasy asset for next year and perhaps the year after. DK Metcalf I have at wide receiver 26. TJ Hawkinson, then Luther Burden, another rookie, who landing spot could just vault him up because I would take Luther Burden over George Pickens in a heartbeat. You talk about a player that I am so lukewarm on, it's not even funny. And technically, I guess I still have him at wide receiver 28 in my top 30, just above Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's another one that is interesting because he started real hot and then was really inconsistent. And a lot of that has to do with the way that they use him. His snap share isn't ever really that high, but we know who George Pickens is now. And I get it. He's young. He's flashy. He makes incredible catches. But his best year came this year. He was the wide receiver 33 in fantasy points per game. He had 108 targets in this offense. And this, oh, by the way, came in a season where he was clearly the alpha in the offense. And he had a 26% target share, which ranked number 16 amongst wide receivers. You can bet money, and I would bet money now, that the Steelers are going to either draft a receiver highly in the draft or they're going to be in on a T. Higgins. I promise you. Do you think if they could steal T. Higgins away from Cincinnati, you don't think that they would be interested in that? I mean, I know a lot of people think the Patriots make a lot of sense for T. Higgins, and he does, but the point of this, of me saying that, is the Steelers were trying to trade for Brandon Ayuk. They're going to add to their receiving room, and as I'm looking at this now, I'm probably going to move George Pickens down. And I get it. He's going to be 24 years old. He has all the talent in the world, but we've seen 3 seasons now from George Pickens that have been very, very mediocre and have left us wanting more. And the air yards are always, like this year, air yards, 1,467 air yards. That's plenty of opportunity for a wide receiver, but he just hasn't really capitalized on it. So then we move down. Jaden Reed, we've talked about a little bit. The Packers are just weird. They don't use him as much as I think they should because I think Jaden Reed's a really good player. Then Tyrone Tracy, another player who's kind of scary, 25 years old. The Giants are the Giants. Who knows? This is a good running back class. They could draft somebody because Tracy was a 5th-round pick. If it were me and I was running a franchise, I would just say we have our running back. Running back's important, and I get it. We kind of had the resurgence of the running back with Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, but I'm not going to invest a ton in that position. Anthony Richardson. When ranking players, Anthony Richardson was the most difficult player you could argue for me to rank. And the most difficult player that anybody's going to have to rank in Dynasty. And just looking on the surface of this right now, as I'm reacting to my own rankings, I'm acting like I'm a different person, like I'm critiquing somebody else's rankings, but I'm not. These are my rankings. That seems a little bit high, but the fluctuation with him is going to be so great. Some leagues are going to take him. So I could see him, some player, some Dynasty player, being just taking a chance on him, especially if you pass on quarterback early. It's going to be a super volatile, risky team that could fall apart because Anthony Richardson could just be not very good. He could be Trey Lance. But there's also a scenario where he rights the ship and he gets better because, he wasn't great to end the season, but, from a fantasy perspective, from week 11 through 16, against the Jets, he finishes the quarterback 5. Then he's quarterback 21 against the Lions, then quarterback 9 against the Patriots, then quarterback 15, then quarterback 14. It's not horrible, but again, the completion percentage, when you look at that, is pretty awful. And yeah, it's just when we look at passer rating, like the passer rating percentages for Anthony Richardson, everything just lines up red. Like true passer rating, true completion percentage, QBR, passer rating versus man zone. Obviously, that's going to be bad if passer rating's bad. Catchable throws, bad. Catchable red zone throws, bad. So it's risky. But just kind of looking at that, I might prefer just Cam Ward, especially if Cam Ward gets a top 5 draft capital. And then Jalen Waddle and Cameron Ward or Cam Ward to close out what is the top 74. Give you a little bit extra. A behind the curtain peek at the Dynasty rankings, and I'll zoom out. So if you have a magnifying glass, you'll be able to see there's tiers 1 through 4. And then I'll scroll down tiers 5 and 6 there. And then 7. And then 8 and 9. So that is it. That's the video. We did it in less than an hour. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you like this content, click the like button. Subscribe to this channel. And we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye now.